Korean women have no idea what the 4B movement is, and we need to stop this misinformation.
Hey lovely viewer, welcome back to Comfort for Life. Excited to have you, amazing viewer, at Comfort for Life. We are glad to have you, and I just want to let you know that your contribution on this particular video will be of great impact, so don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comment section. So in today's video, we'll be still focusing on the issue of low childbirth in Korea. But to start us off, native Koreans are expressing their frustration over white people and Korean American who are writing articles on Korean low childbirth and considering the 4B movement to be the main reason of low childbirth, while not addressing the real reason behind the existence of the 4B movement in the first place. So, if there is a 4B movement starting with feminism in Korea, what could be the reason behind it? So that's what is unaddressed. We'll be highlighting on that in this particular video. We'll be shedding light on that in this particular video, while also addressing the measures that the Korean government have put in place to address the issue at hand. I'll call you to listen to the few stitches that I put together, but I also want to acknowledge my newest subscribers. You've subscribed to Comfort for Life. I'm glad that you've joined the family, and I just want to appreciate you. And don't hesitate to turn on the bell so that you get notified whenever we have a new video. And if you've been watching me for a while without subscribing, kindly subscribe and like the video kindly for recommendation. Let's dive into this.
In Korea, when woman gives birth, mothers don't take shower for weeks. You might say like, oh, that's disgusting, but it's because, wait, woman gives birth in Korea? Not anymore. Not anymore.
Korean women have no idea what the 4B movement is, and we need to stop this misinformation.
Okay, so thank you to my friend Annie for making that video, because I am a Korean woman currently living in Korea, and I have so much to say about this topic. So most of the 4B movement videos that I've seen on TikTok are made from foreigners, and I think Korean Americans or just Asian people living in the West, but not actually people living in Korea. So like I said, I live in Seoul. What I think is happening is the Western media likes to really pick up on these sensationalist, provocative topics and then makes it into an article, and then everyone on TikTok follows suit and makes videos about it. But let me tell you, I am 29, going to turn 30 this year, and literally all the conversations that I have with my friends around my age is about, oh my god, we're looking to get married, we need to find good partners, and we need to do this before it gets too late or we're just like aged out of their marriage market, you know? And I just made a YouTube video about this, Korea's population crisis, why nobody's getting married or having babies. But I also explained there are services in Korea like marriage matchmaking services where people go and you pay a broker and you submit all this information about yourself, your income, your assets, your family background, if you have any debt, like which university you went to, you submit all that information, and then they take that and then they will try to match you up with people who they think that you're on par with. So you know how you see in K-dramas how like the poor girl ends up marrying the richest CEO of Korea? Yeah, in reality that never happens. So people go to these marriage services and they're heavily used. There are literally so many in the country because everyone is using them. And so the 4B movement in Korea is a very, very small fraction of the whole Korean population in general. It's just the Western media likes to highlight that part and make it seem like it's the biggest issue in Korea, which it really, really is not. I can promise you that. Don't believe all those sensational articles written online all the time. Most people in Korea still like the other sex. We want to date, we want to find love, we want to get married. Those are like the big majority, and it's only the small group of extreme radical misandrists and extreme radical misogynists. They just seem like the loudest because the most attention goes to them. But still, many people confused about what is the number one reason for such low birth rate in Korea. Then it is not 4B, but it's simply the cost of living in Korea is way too high to even consider bringing a new baby into the world. So this is from May of 2023. They did a survey asking people in Korea, why did you not get married? And the number one reason is cannot financially afford it, did not find the right person, did not feel the need to do it. But the economic instability and just the cost of living in Korea is just too much. Let me explain. The average salary in Seoul is around 34,000 USD, and the average cost of an apartment in Seoul is around $1 million. So a person living in Seoul would have to save 100% of his or her income for over 20 years to be able to afford a house. And how is it possible to save 100% of your paycheck each month? It's literally impossible. And South Korea is actually the most expensive country to raise a kid from birth to the age of 18. And it basically costs around $272,000 to do so. Are you willing to take that burden yourself? Korea spent about $20 billion in total on private education last year. So students here don't just stop studying when school time ends. They will attend private after-school academies. These are called hagwons. Or you'll have private tutors come to your home. But either way, usually maths, science, English. If you play a musical instrument, you could have lessons for that, or sports, all this kind of thing, private tuition. And if you're asking like, why is this necessary? Why do all the parents do this? Well, this is because Korea is such a highly competitive society. Getting into the best universities in Korea is so important because that determines how the rest of your life is going to play out. If you get into the top universities, you can get really good jobs and then you can make more income that way. If you don't do well and you don't get into the good universities, your CV, when you try to apply for jobs later, they're just gonna not pick you, basically. So private tuition from basically kindergarten to all the way into university age is a must. And if a parent's like, oh, that seems too much, I don't want to make my kid go through all that. Well, because literally every other household is investing into their kid and sending them into private tuition. If you don't do that for your child as a parent, then your kid is just going to get left behind. So this is the number one reason why the birth rate is this low. Simply, it's too expensive to raise a kid unless you're super wealthy or you come from a really rich family. I have a cousin who's been married for about 4 years. They're both working. They both work. And my aunt is always asking, why aren't you guys having kids? Why don't you have a kid? And they're both like, it's simply the thought of it is just too much. I don't want to go through all that. It's too much stress. And also as a parent, you don't want to just do a half-assed job for your kid when they're born. So that's why my cousin and her husband are just simply like, we're just going to be double income, no kids. And this is the number one reason for the low birth rate, not 4B. I'm not saying feminism doesn't exist in Korea. It does, but that is not the main reason. As for
It's literally impossible for white people to write an article about non-white people without making it sound like they're observing some endangered species of tree frog in the Amazon rainforest. I spent months observing the elusive and docile female South Korean. How peculiar that she seems to have the resources and shelter, but refuses to mate. And I already know what white people are going to say when they see this. Like, there's nothing racist about how she's talking about it, but come on, guys. Why is this written like this? Like, this is an issue that white women have in the West. Why is it talked about in this way that you're like looking at it through binoculars like, ew, isn't it strange? Isn't it weird? She looks physically attractive. Why aren't the male South Koreans taking advantage of her? Come on, Jean. This is what you're also going through. Why are you talking about it like, oh, look, oh, her bottom is red and inflamed, but the male is not mounting her. Like, why do you do this? It's weird. It's like very subtle. It is very subtle. Good for you. Good for you masking your little colonizer. Where's your PIF helmet or whatever the hell? Very subtle, but we can pick up on it, Jean. If you wrote an article about other white women, you would not take this tone with it. You would be like, let me tell you something. Men are horrible now, and we don't want to have babies with them. But no, you gotta go the fucking, Nigel, look, I found one, Nigel. Come on, man. It's weird. It's weird, and we are picking up on it now, so you gotta fucking roll with the times.
The seeds of this crisis were something sowed by the government a long time ago.
Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the world, and Park Jin-woo here is talking about the seeds of this fertility crisis stemming from Korean government efforts in the late 20th century to try to lower the fertility rate. He covers the history very well, and I encourage you to watch his video. But as a Japanese American married to a Korean, I've been thinking about this issue for a while, and I think there are some other thoughts that I have about this. So he makes a lot of good points about Korean government policy in the late 20th century, and I think there's a lot of plausible reasons to think some of the aftermath of those policies may be contributing to the current low fertility rate. But I would point out that Japan also has a very low fertility rate. It's not quite as low as Korea, but it's one of the lowest in the world as well. And Japan's fertility rate has been low for decades. And because of this, Japan has been making attempts to increase the fertility rate for decades. During the same periods when Korea was trying to reduce the fertility rate, at least during some of that period, Japan was actively trying to increase it, and it hasn't worked. If you look more broadly across the world, you can see that fertility rate is actually quite low across the developed world. So, for example, in Europe, the fertility rate is also below replacement. And it is, for example, Germany is one of the lowest in the world as well. It's a little bit higher than Japan and Korea, but not a lot higher. And France is like one of the only countries that has had some success seemingly in Europe, but even they are below replacement rate. So if you look at fertility rate versus economic development, you can see that the higher the economic development, the lower the fertility rate in general. Now, I firmly believe that there are specific cultural things and economic things in Japan and Korea specifically that make fertility even lower than, let's say, Germany. And it's a bit counterintuitive because you would think that one of the reasons why people aren't having children in Korea is because people feel economically pressured. And yet, when Korea was a much, much poorer country, the fertility rate was sky high. So I think in addition to the factors that this creator raises in terms of, past Korean government policy, I think there are all other reasons. And I am not sure that I have seen a very clear explanation as to why development and fertility have an inverse relationship. In my opinion, the fact that Japan and Korea also have very low fertility rates may have some cultural basis because the two countries share a lot of similar culture in a lot of ways. However, I am not going to speculate about what those things are. I've seen a lot of people speculating it's because of this or that, income inequality or whatever. The reality is that Korean income inequality is an issue and it's causing a lot of stress, but it is actually lower than the United States, which has a higher fertility rate. The United States, however, is also below replacement and has been for many years. I think if Japan and Korea are going to pull themselves out of this low fertility slump, it may be more instructive to look at developed countries that have somehow managed to do okay, like France. But even in France's case, like I said, they're below replacement, so there has to be some attention paid to immigration policy as well. I really don't know if anyone's cracked this question. Why is fertility so low, especially in the more advanced developed countries?
The craziest news coming out of Korea today as this 37-year-old woman is indicted for giving birth and then murdering both of her children back in 2012 and 2015, respectively. So she killed two babies, both of her own, within those 3 years. The first baby she thought was being too loud at a motel, suffocated against her own chest, and killed. The second baby, she poured orange juice down their throat, saw that they weren't breathing and wanted to kill it, killed it in the public bathroom, and both babies she buried in a nearby mountain. Because of statute of limitations, she's actually not being found guilty for the abandonment of dead bodies, but of course is going to be found guilty of the two murders, having confessed to one herself.
Watch how the South Korean couple reacted when they were asked about getting married and having kids.
Two Koreans want to get married.
I don't know. These days, no, I don't think married.
Marriage is okay, but not baby.
Why no baby?
So hard. 저 혼자도 힘들어요.
Just baby too.
So there's a pretty low chance that these folks want kids, and it's actually following a trend. We all know kids are setting money on fire expensive. That's also true in South Korea. But South Korea also struggles with work-life balance. It has one of the most grueling work hours, with people spending most of their days at work, and then once you clock out of work, you gotta go spend time with your boss eating and drinking. Additionally, places like South Korea and Japan relying on women to be the primary caretaker for children. So it puts a lot of stress on women, hence why a lot of young people don't want to have children. And because of this, fertility rates have plummeted across South Korea. But this decline is also being seen around the world. Countries with the lowest birth rates include Greece, Italy, Spain, Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan. And we're seeing this decline in the US as well. Millennials in the US are having fewer kids than their parents. In fact, there's only 34% of millennials that have kids in America. And research has found that almost 44% of people who don't have kids plan on never having them. It's largely because of cost, but also fear of the future, like climate change. And a lot of those problems have been created by bad government policies, lobbying by very rich companies, the rich not paying their fair share in taxes, which causes there to be less government programs to support people. And in a way, this is all sort of a dark comedy, because there are a lot of economists, governments, companies that are freaking out about how they're going to get workers in the future. And the whole irony is that if you make living impossible for the people who work to make you rich, eventually there's not going to be enough people to keep working for you.
So I wanted to address what has the Korean government done so far to increase the birth rate. I went down a little rabbit hole searching for all this information. Keep in mind that this is not including the state level, regional level benefits. Also keep in mind that this is not pregnancy benefits. First, at the time of birth, all Korean women will receive $2,250. This is on top of the money they would have received when they were pregnant. All families will receive $750 a month just for being a parent until the child turns 1, and $375 until the child turns 2. Children in Korea receive $75 a month until 8 years of age, just because we have to talk about the extensive healthcare benefits. Most families will be eligible to get government-sponsored postpartum nannies. High-income families may have to chip in a little bit, but it will be heavily subsidized nonetheless. These postpartum nannies, I heard, are wonderful. They do everything for you, including childcare, your chores, laundry, up to 8 hours a day. Any children who are born premature or with congenital problems will receive extensive medical benefits. We're talking up to $7,500 a month worth of medical benefits. And remember, that's a lot of money in Korea because Korean healthcare system does not cost as much as it does in the US. And parents with these premature babies will receive one-on-one support, personalized counseling. Low-income families are eligible for free formula and diapers. PTO for fathers is up to 10 days. If you have more than one child, 15 days PTO. Parental leave up to 1.5 years, where the government will subsidize 100% of your income. There's a limit. I think it's around $3,000, $4,000 a month for both mom and dad. And the government will cover you for up to 6 months. Early leave for parents. This is until your child turns 12. The government will pay you $10 a week so that you can leave work early for your children. They will discount your electricity bills 30% up to 3 years. This is a really good one. There's newborn family housing benefits. Well, the government will give you lower interest rate for your first time home purchase or 전세, and they will prioritize low income families. I didn't even go over all of the childcare benefits, all other benefits, pregnancy benefits that is available for new parents in Korea. What are your thoughts? Do you still think the Korean government is not doing enough? Can you imagine if we had these benefits as new parents in the States? Like, that would be so crazy.
Huge controversy in Korea as this 28-year-old woman gives birth to her 7th child amidst all-time low birth rates in Korea, and the government grants her $10,000 to help with childcare as part of an incentive program to increase birth rates in Korea. The controversy came at realizing that she was previously on a show called High School Parents, which highlights the lives of those that became parents during their high school years, with her being no exception, who actually got her first baby from a different man out of wedlock, and then was then separated and married this new man at the same age as her, got 5 more kids, and now on to the 7th that she's given birth to. In the show, it's been revealed that she is not very responsible for her kids, and her mom, the grandmother on the maternal side of these kids, are actually the one that's doing the cooking, taking care of the kids, while the mom kind of lays around and does the bare minimum, with, of course, netizens or people online, the viewership, and even the celebrities that are commentating on the show criticizing her for her lack of responsibility and overdependence on the grandma. The comments that's celebrating her 7th birth and the grants from the government are saying that perhaps people should rethink before having so many kids. Of course, having more kids is very celebratory in this day and age of Korea having low birth rates, but make sure to reconsider if you're able to provide for them before you have them, especially given that the husband is not really a high-income earner. They have talked about how their house is too small for the 7 kids. Let me know your thoughts.
Korea's low birth rate part 2. So I talked about the emotional side as a Korean woman, why Korea's birth rate might be so low. In this video, I'm going to talk about more of the practical side. Hi, I'm Marianne and I talk about cultural differences. By the way, for your information, Korea's birth rate is 0.7 heading to 0.6 this year. It's pretty bad. Since 2006, the government has spent about $287 billion to boost the birth rate. But as you can see in the graph, It's not working. Their budget for 2024 is about 30 billion US dollars. Now I'm going to talk about the reasons why it's getting worse, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. First, one of the obvious reasons causing Korea's low birth rate is money. Housing, particularly in Seoul, is just too expensive, but everyone wants to live in Seoul because that's where their jobs are. And the average apartment in Seoul costs around 12억, which is just under 1 million US dollars. And it's an apartment, by the way, not a house, apartment. So what this means is that Koreans with average income, which is around 30k per year, would have to save up for like 30 plus years of their full income without spending any of it to buy a house. So yeah, it's very unrealistic to own a house unless your parents have one or you suddenly become a millionaire. And it's quite ironic because Koreans nowadays spend more money on treating themselves, good food, traveling, luxury goods, and etc. because they can't afford a house anyway. You also have to consider that Korean men only start working in their mid to late 20s or early 30s because of the mandatory military service. So it's not surprising that a lot of Koreans aren't even thinking about building a family, in their 20s at least. But hypothetically, let's say you do it for love.
You can do it, babe. Money doesn't buy you happiness.
Korea is a very competitive and a comparative society. And when you're at school, grades matter. Because good grades mean that you'll go to a good university, and going to a good university means that you're going to get a good job, and that means you're probably going to get a good salary. I know there are exceptions, but sadly this is the reality for most people in Korea. So now, in order to get good grades, you can't just do school. You have to go to academies or do extra tutoring, and they're not free. Korean elementary, middle, and high school students usually stay out until very late at night, like 10 or 11 p.m. This is what I used to do when I was in school in Korea, so I know. Now, you might want to say, as a parent,
good grades don't matter, there's no need to study that much.
But academies don't just mean a place to study. It's also a place where children socialize and bond with each other. It's like their second school. The child is going to feel left out if he's the only one not going to academies, and you as a parent is going to feel guilty. It's quite sad actually, because I did some research during my master's related to this topic, and a lot of Korean mothers don't want to pressurize and force their kids to study or send their kids to academies, but they feel like they have to because everyone else is doing it. They don't want their child to be an outlier. So it's the society and the system that's putting pressure on students, parents, and teachers. And next, I think this is the most important reason. What you have to remember is that Korean culture is based on Confucianism and collectivism. Of course, we adopted some individualistic values from the West, but especially for work, the culture is still very hierarchical, and you're expected to prioritize the group, the team, not yourself or your personal issues. Otherwise, it's considered selfish. I'll give you an example. This Korean lady has a very, very important meeting at work, but that morning her child is coughing a lot and she's the only one who can take the child to the doctors. Understandably, she chooses a child because the child means everything to her, but that also means that she's causing inconvenience at work, and they're not going to like that. Even if nobody says anything directly, she's going to feel guilty because she chose to be selfish. And if this happens more and more, people are going to give her nunchi to voluntarily quit work, or they're going to exclude her from important projects, which means no more opportunity for a promotion for her. So it doesn't really matter if the government offers more months of paid leaves and set the law that the company can't fire her. She's really not going to enjoy being in an environment where she feels like a burden and where she feels guilty all the time. In fact, in a lot of work interviews, Korean companies will ask you questions like, are you single? Are you planning on getting married? Do you have a boyfriend? Are you planning on having a baby anytime soon, etc.? So they can probably avoid you. Now, she could alternate this with her husband, but it's very tricky in a society where the mother is considered to be the main carer for the baby. And I really wouldn't be surprised if the husband's colleagues were like, oh, what about the mother? And if he says, oh, she's working, they might think, oh, so she cares more about work, not the baby. So she becomes a terrible mother. And this is a sad truth. Many working mothers in Korea feel like they're neither good at their job or being a good mother. And that's only the beginning, because they can't spend as much time with their child as stay-at-home mothers can. The choice she has is either being a guilty worker or a guilty mother. Finally, the average age of couples getting married is a lot later than before. So when the couples feel like they've built enough stability and they're ready for a family, it might be challenging for a woman to have a baby because biological clock is a factor. So in many cases, Korean women go through IVF, and I'm sure you know it's not an easy process physically, mentally, and financially. So yeah. To be honest, I think the last two are the biggest reasons why Korea's birth rate is not increasing. What do you think?
I appreciate that you wish this extent. You just realize that this is not just a Korean problem. It's already in the US. It's also part of Japanese. Japanese are also part of the problem. So they are also going through the same. So could that be the recession that we're going through? Because not only Korea that are experiencing this economic crisis, the crisis is everywhere. So what if the spread of movements becomes global? Are you thinking about that? Yes, there's that movement, but also that stems its origin in the economic crisis and the recession, and everyone around the globe is speaking of economic crisis, recession, and that. So guys, if this becomes a global movement, what will be of the next generation? I just want you to think of that, and I appreciate that you spent your precious time at Comfort for Life. Thank you so much for being part of this. I love and appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye for now.